just sharing some information concerning King James. King James was so-called Negro. He was not an Edomite. I repeat, King James was not an Edomite. He was a so-called Negro. And this book, which is the translators, the writing of King James, proves it. And I'm going to read a few excerpts from the translators. And it reads, "Be not like swine to tread under feet so precious things, neither yet like dogs to tear and abuse holy things. Say not to our Savior with the Girgashites, depart out of our coast, neither yet with Esau selling your birthright for a mess of pottage." So if King James was so-called Edomite, he would have never had this in his records, that Esau sold his birthright a red red pottage to his brother Jacob. He would have never put that in there. Now this is just the intro to me proving that James was not a so-called Edomite or a so-called white man. Which, when I say so-called white man, I mean Edomite, not so-called Edomite, because the Edomites are the white man. But this is just further proof that he was not an Edomite, because they like to say that he was an Edomite. He was a so-called white man, but he wasn't. So I'm gonna read it again. It say, "Be not like swine to tread under feet so precious things, neither yet like dogs to tear and abuse holy things. Say not to our Savior with the Girgashites, depart out of our coast, neither yet with Esau selling your birthright for a mess of pottage." Now he's writing this to the Israelites, to the Negroes that was actually in what, to all the Israelites, but you had Israelites that was actually in Scotland and British in the British Isles, and I'm gonna prove that. So I'm gonna go into this other book called Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1 by David McRitchie. Back into it. Nation Knows No Color Line, J.A. Rogers, proving my point, showing you King James was a so-called Negro. Starting off in the book, page 70, and it reads, "In the person of the King of Alban of the 10th century, history knows him as Kenneth, sometimes as Dub, and as Niger. We know as an historical fact that Niger el Dub has lived and reigned over certain black divisions of our islands, and probably white divisions also, and that a race known as the Sons of the Black succeeded him in history, Welsh traditions. Welsh say tell also of these black people, of the legends and history of Scottish Highlands." Now you see the word Scottish, that's where King James is from. He's from Scotland. And this is his grandfather, one of his great-great-great-grandfathers, who's known as Kenneth, Dub, and Niger, which Niger means black. It say Salakia, Highlands are both witnesses to the existence of a purely black people there. Barton Stevenson is black as a bloomin', black as a blackamoor. So the word blackamoor or moor means black. That's where you get the word moor from. The word moor, it means black. It said Godfrey Higgins and Gerald Massey and David McRitchie have written of these ancient British Negroes. So they were Negroes. They were British Negroes who ruled Britain. So from there, let's jump to page 776. Show you the coat of arms. As you see, James' grandmother right there. And it reads, it say British families, top left, the Moors. British families, top left, the Moors of Yorkshire. Let's furthermore read. It say, as proof he gives instance of Negroes in much later time who were brought to England chiefly from Africa, being baptized into the church and given the surname Moore, or Moore. He cites the case of Eleanor, maid of honor to Queen Margaret of Scotland. See, Scotland, where King James is from. It say in 1404, Salakia 1504, he say, 2 Blackamoor girls, the Queen, Salakia, 2 Blackamoor girls arrived and were educated at the court where they waited on the Queen. They were baptized, Ellen and Margaret, in June 1507. A tournament was held in honor of the Queen's black lady, Ellen Moore, which was conducted with great splendor. Her husband, King James, had Negro minstrels, the chief of which was Peter the Marin, or Moore. McRitchie concludes. So McRitchie is showing you that they were Moors, you know what I'm saying? And we read that Blackamoor or Moor means black. So from there we're gonna go into his book, which is titled Ancient and Modern Britons by David McRitchie. We're gonna go into his book and go detail blow for blow of what he wrote. This is page 202. It say the 4th century Scots, then being undistinguishable from the general black herd that made of the Scoto-Pictish army, were themselves of the same complexion. What complexion was that? Black. As the Picto proper, that is to say, they also were Maori or Moors. Now remember, the word Moor means black. Blackamoor, which means black. It say black Irishman of Queen Elizabeth reign, with his plaited hair, his swarthy skin. Swarthy means, the word swarthy means black, and that's where you get the word Stuart from, which that was King James' last name. It say, however contradictory this deduction may appear, it must never be forgotten that the people who made Scotland an independent nation were not Scots. The Bruces, the Wallaces, the Stuarts, which King James come from the Stuarts, it say, and many other lesser names were Normans and Flemings. It say it is true they identify themselves with the early race. So they identify themselves with the early race of them. It's saying, and readily assumes the name and some of the ideas of their adopted country. For men are very chameleons in their aptitude for taking on local color. So this is what they did. Now let's go over to the Douglas. Now the Douglas intermarried with the Stuart family. The word Douglas means dark stranger. So let's show you more evidence. It say he belonged to the oldest sept of his clan that known as the Black Douglas, a term which proves to be tautological tautological when analyzed, since Douglas signifies the black swarthy men. Now that's where you get the word kin of Dub come from the word Douglas, which that was King James one of his great grandfathers. That's where you get the word kin of Dub, which right here Douglas is the same words. That's where you get that from, and the word Douglas means dark stranger. So let's show you a little more evidence. It says Sir James, known as the Black Douglas, but so also was his grandson, a son of Archibald the Grim. So apparently was the 8th Earl of the line of who was killed at Stirling in the year 1452 by King James II. So I'm going to just close out on that, but it's so much of other evidence I can go into, but I'm going to just close out on that.